Chapter 5, talking about developing a global vision, global marketing, the importance of it. As always, the beginning of each PowerPoint, there are going to be multiple learning outcomes. Make sure that you look over these and that you are able to do what they are asking you to do. Now, the first topic that they're covering is the importance of global marketing. And the first thing I want you to be aware of is over the past 2 decades, world trade has climbed from approximately $200 billion a year to almost $18 trillion per year. So this is an industry that is very profitable, that is growing by leaps and bounds, that is something that businesses need to at least consider or look into. It's a way for them to gain profits, gain revenues, increase market share within their industry. But you do have to be aware of what your competitors are doing, how they are being profitable, or potentially even where they could be losing money internationally, worldwide. You have to be aware of the different cultures in the communities that you're going into, the countries that you're going into, do's and don'ts, what's accepted and what's not accepted, and be able to use those to your advantage. Now, when we're talking about gross domestic product, or GDP, that is the total market value of all the final goods and services that are produced within a country. In this case, it would be within the United States for what is usually 1 year. Sometimes GDP is measured in quarters every 3 months. Sometimes it's measured annually. So it all just depends upon that. As you can see on the slide, there's a lot of private sector jobs that have been created due to exporting products. There have also, by the way, been a lot of U.S. jobs that have been lost due to outsourcing and having jobs sent abroad as well. Usually it's only large, like multinational companies that are seriously competing in the worldwide markets. Right? There are some smaller companies that are now trying to pursue international markets to try to get a piece of that revenue and those profits as well. But it's hard sometimes to generate the sales against those large multinational companies. As I just mentioned before, one of the major negatives of globalization, worldwide trade, is that millions of Americans have lost their jobs. And if they haven't lost their jobs, there are millions more who fear that they are going to lose their jobs. Outsourcing has been a major factor. There are a lot of countries that have very, very low minimum wages, if you want to call them that, pennies to the dollar of what we have to pay here, plus no benefits. So the cost is very, very affordable to American companies to outsource to foreign companies to save themselves a lot of money, because normally the largest expense for a company comes in the form of the employees. Some possible benefits, though, on the flip side, reasons to go into worldwide trade or worldwide marketing are all of these things that you see on the slide here. More competition is always a good thing for us as consumers. It's meant to keep the price in check, quality of products, goods and services a little bit higher than what they would be without competition. Number one, expanding the economic freedom, both domestically and abroad as well. So, businesses sometimes go to the countries that operate most efficiently. Sometimes they go to countries that have the technology that is needed to produce their goods or provide their services as well. So there are a lot of opportunities and options out there, good benefits for companies. Now, just before I go to the next slide, I just want you to be aware that multinational corporations are those companies that are engaged in international trade, that are heavily engaged in international trade, that they move products from country to country. A lot of times they have multiple worldwide headquarters. They have headquarters in multiple countries. That is, a lot more beneficial for them, so that they can take care of problems or situations that arise, answer questions about products, customers, whatever, on the spot, instead of having to go back to foreign countries or other countries where only one headquarters happens to be. Right. Some strategies that are available if you do decide to do a global mindset. Okay. Companies operate in one country and sell into others. That would be like operating in the United States but then exporting your products. Set up foreign subsidiaries to handle sales. Operate an entire line of business in another country, and then virtual operation. So these go from, just to let you know, from less risky at the top to more risky at the bottom. The least amount of risk is to have your headquarters and your company set up in one country and then just export products to another one. Less of an investment, less money to lose. When you either set up subsidiaries or actually set up your entire line of business in another country, there's a lot more risk that goes on there, a lot more investment in that particular situation. And then virtual operation, there's potential for a lot of gain, but there's also a high potential for some risk as well. Okay, you can just see on this slide pros and cons for multinational corporations. Okay, you can just see that. I'm not going to read those to you. But if you're looking here, the difference between what's called global marketing standardization and multi-domestic strategy. The top one, the global marketing standardization, this is where it doesn't matter where you sell your products. The products are the same no matter what. You're not going to change your products based upon where you're selling them, what cultures you're selling them to. That has no bearing whatsoever. The only bearing that comes into play is what's best for you and what's most profitable or affordable for you. The multi-domestic strategy is where you take into consideration the different cultures and countries that you're selling your products in and tweak them a little bit. You have to allow your subsidiaries in those countries to be able to handle their products in the most appropriate manner as well. Okay, now we're talking about external environment. Remember, the external environment are things that you cannot control. Okay, those are things that are out of your control. And we're talking about external environment for global marketers. These are the 5 areas that are commonly referred to as the most important ones that you cannot control in that external environment when you're going global. And we're talking about culture. Culture, it underlies the family, the educational system. Religion is very important to culture in a lot of countries. Social classes, all of that kind of stuff. And if you, as a company, do not understand the culture of the country that you're going into and trying to sell, you're doomed to fail, because there are a lot of things that are different in other countries that might be accepted here, might not be accepted over there. And you need to understand what is accepted and not accepted. You have to understand translation of words. If there's slang compared to traditional translations, there's a lot that goes into it. So you have to just be aware that the culture is a very, very important aspect of this. And the 3 most important things to keep in mind in regards to working with different cultures in different countries are listed here. Okay, language, customs, and values and expectations. Okay, values and expectations. Moving on to economic factors. In general, complex or sophisticated industries are found in more developed countries, and then more basic industries are found in less developed countries. So when you see this, you're going to have to determine what is best for you, your company, your industry, the customers, the potential customers that are available in these areas as well. This slide, I'm going to see at the bottom where it says understanding and forecasting growth and demand globally requires understanding countries around the world. So trying to get an idea, forecasting is a prediction of the future. So if you're trying to predict where there's going to be economic growth, where there's going to be sales potential, where there's going to be higher demand, you have to truly understand what is going on in that country economically, sociologically. You have to understand the culture and the customs that are there to find out whether or not, even if there is a lot of growth there, if your product would be successful or not. Talking about China and India, those are two very attractive countries, not just because of their high population, but because of the high growth rates also. So there's a lot of people there, large potential markets, and they are continually growing as well. Now, government policies run from no private ownership in some countries, minimal individual freedom, very little central government, maximum personal freedom. It goes all over the place. As rights of private property increase, government-owned industries tend to decrease. They go in opposite directions. One thing that the book does mention is this piece of information. It says that the least regulated and most efficient economies and concentrated among countries with well-established common law traditions, the least regulated and most efficient economies and concentrated among countries with well-established common law traditions include Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and the United States. The only other two that are mentioned in the book are Singapore and Hong Kong as well. Some legal considerations. These are things to definitely know and be aware of. Definitely know the legal considerations here. Tariffs or taxes, quotas or limits that are put on product that is coming in, imports. Boycotts, if you boycott something, you are in essence banning it, you're not including it at all. Exchange control, market grouping, and trade agreements. And we're going to talk about trade agreements, I think, a little bit more later. Exchange control is just where there's a buying and a selling. Okay, you have to be able to buy foreign exchange through a particular agency. There are trade alliances and then trade agreements. Trade agreements, a lot of times, if you ever heard of NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, is where they reduce a lot of these legal considerations to more freely open up trade between countries. All right, a couple things that they talk about here. The Uruguay Round is an example. Okay, this was adopted in 1994, signed by 151 different nations. And what they wanted to do with this was to lower or decrease different trade barriers that are all around the world. And by incorporating this Uruguay Round, it was estimated that global income would increase by $235 billion per year. All right, now here's where I'm going to stop the first video, and then I will pick up here with the next video.